Next podcast with Chris and Todd.
Hey, I'm here with my fantastic mustard-colored outdoor adventure shirt.
I thought you were going to call me mustard
No,
colored.
you are not mustard-colored. You look fantastic today.
Okay.
This is crazy. We are back with season 3.
Season 3. Can you believe that?
No, I thought you would have got tired of me by now. So, like, hey, deuces, deuces on
It's
deuce.
been great. It's been real.
Let's kick number 3 off. This is pretty crazy. I'm excited about what this means. The new setup.
Yeah.
Kudos
Looking
to
good.
whoever thought this out and made it look nice. So hopefully,
Josh and Milton.
That's right.
Shouting.
They won't be distracted by us.
They make
They'll
us
be
look
able to-
good and sound good.
yeah, well,
thank you guys.
The PM is in the house, so we now the
Producer
Tylenol PM. Yeah, Professor Milton.
Yes.
I don't know, whatever you want to call him, the Prime Minister.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Either
good
one.
stuff. It's good. He's good people. So no, but we've been excited. I've been excited. I can't
get
speak
going
for
on it.
Todd, but I've been excited about the opportunity to get back to Next
Mm-hmm.
and to share with you. And my daughter the other day was like, "So, are you done with the podcast? Are you keeping going?" I'm like, "Just hold your horses. It's going to be fine." So here we are. And we got some things I think we're excited about. We've been discussing maybe even some more guests, but talking about some books, some different topics and things like that coming up.
Yeah. Excited for this season. Looking forward to it. And if this is like your first time ever joining us and you're wondering, what is the next podcast? What is this
Welcome.
about?
Welcome.
It is pretty much us trying to say, hey, what's that next step in your
Yeah.
life? Maybe you've hit an area where it's, man, I just keep bumping up against this. And so we talk about all different kinds of things of just trying to go. I think God especially is always pushing us. What's that next step in your life? This journey you're going on. Think of God taking you on a hike and we're going, hey, what's that next step?
Yeah, we've never arrived. And I mean, like, I do a lot of premarital counseling, like we've talked about on this podcast before. And, one of the things I love stressing to those 2 individuals that I'm meeting with, this is the beginning of the journey that God has you on. You have not reached any end by the imagination. And it's so true in our relationship with Jesus.
Yep.
Like you don't reach something, you're like, oh man, I finally got there. It's great. No, you have an opportunity to continue to grow, to continue to abide, continue to be present with the Lord and be obedient to what he calls you to. And that really is such a huge conversation that leads us to where we go a lot of the time. So
Yeah, and our podcast has ranged from all different kinds of things.
Absolutely.
Whether it's talking about marriage, talking about parenting, talking about spiritual disciplines.
Sometimes your fashion choices.
Yep.
I mean,
this is true.
my favorite's your big cup of oatmeal shirt.
Yeah,
I hope you wear that soon.
So if you go back and catch that, enjoy. But what we want to kind of dive into today is just talking about rhythms.
Yep.
Because for us right now, fall season's kicking in. Like there's a rhythm even to the seasons God created, all those kind of things. And so mainly kind of focusing on, okay, how do we find a rhythm that's healthy for us?
Yeah.
And not saying we're going to go into detail, but you've got to work on this. You've got to find it. So Chris, a question for you that I've just been like, as you've navigated conversation and even your own thoughts of rhythm, helping people navigate rhythm, what's been some of the biggest things you've learned and biggest advice that you'd give?
One of my favorite quotes that I have been just kind of wrestling with, it's a John Acuff quote or John Acuff thought, is just what's on the other side of hard? What's on the other side of this hard thing? Because getting out of a slothful rhythm or getting out of like being stuck, really sometimes as I get older, it gets harder.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. I don't like being like, okay, but this hard thing in front of me of getting a new rhythm or getting back into rhythm, I know that there are benefits on the other side of that hard thing. And that's been huge. Okay, I need to begin to work out, or I need to begin to take this extra time to be in that. And there are so many benefits to that, even though we've had friends and we talked to Anna Simmons, she's like that quote from the Army, embrace the suck. It's sometimes, developing that new rhythm or coming up with something new feels sucky, but man, it's so worth it. The benefit is there. And whether that's time with the Lord or time just, not being distracted by things that could easily distract you. I heard a quote, just a preacher the other day, he talked about, we have so many options.
Yeah.
We do and I think that's why people like Facebook and Instagram, there's options of different people, of different situations and circumstances, conversations. but I want to limit those options so I can hone in on where I know and I believe I need to go as a dad, as a husband, as a guy, as a pastor, and just slowing myself down to say, okay, God, I want to listen to you. I want to be obedient, and I want to develop this rhythm that is going to carry me through this season because, you know, with kids and life, I need to be prepared for what's coming at me. Yep. So
I'm curious. I'm thinking just in rhythms, like things that you've got a rhythm for.
Yeah.
Like you've got work.
Yep.
You got family. Obviously, time with the Lord it plays into that. And you also got friends. You've got dynamics that you just want to go do. How do you determine what gets the time in some of that?
I think for me, I mean, my time with the Lord in the morning, always, it has to be my number one. And you know, I can be honest and say, man, there are moments where that's not number one, and I know that I'm off that day. But that is the determining factor. I've got to be in God's Word. I've got to spend time praying for my girls, for my family, and for the things that are going on. Like, got some big things I'm praying about for my sister right now, you know, and you know, that's big on my list. And so, but determining those things, I'm a guy in my rhythm of life that needs to be out with people. Okay. Like, so I already had coffee with guys this morning, you know, and I love it. So I've got to be social, but the rhythms of, I would say, man, 10 years ago, I wasn't good with having lunch with my wife. I would fill it with my job. Like, I need to meet with people. And when we moved back to Rapid, I purposely said, I need a rhythm of time with Rachel, because we were focused on weeknights and dates in the evening. And we found it best as we looked at our schedule, say, hey, lunch dates are where our bread and butter is going to be. Yeah. So those are the things that I had to prioritize and say, I need a lunch with Rachel at least once a week, maybe even twice a week, because she's just so good to look at. And she's so pretty. Anyway, but I need priority with my girls. It's not just watching them or listening to them do homework, which is mind numbing, right? I don't want to hear about your homework. I suck at math. If you want to be creative and make up a dumb song for a class, I'm your guy, you know, but, got it. But really, man, what do they enjoy? You know, those take priority for me. Like, and over the years, I've had to learn to say no to some really great things. And that's tough. And, you know, did you ever deal with that? Like, how do you say no to something that could be a good part of your rhythm, but in this season is not where you want to go, or believe that God's like, hey, I need you to take some time here, not here?
I think, yes, I think that's when you find, for me personally, is like, I have these rhythms, but they're not working, or they're off because things are changing. Also, I think with seasons, like say summer's wrapping up, we go into fall, now it creates a different kind of rhythm.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you keep that rhythm going for a while, but then you're like, hey, I need to tweak it. And then I also found I get sometimes bored with my rhythms.
Which is what you did, what was it, last year? You talked about switching your rhythm of devotions.
Yep. So sometimes I could be like,
Lord, whatever.
I'd be like, okay, I'd read scripture, and I did it all at night, and I was just like, it's just not, I want it to, and it wasn't bad, but it just needed to be better. It just needed to increase.
Needs a little tweaking.
I think about what you and Rachel did. Like, all right, the date nights and the evenings weren't working as best, so we needed to change it up because that just worked better. And so I think looking at all your rhythms and going, is it producing what God wants in my life?
Yeah.
And so that's why I would say, looking at it from a weekly basis, like, okay, am I getting in the time that I need to get the work done that God has for me to do?
Yep.
But also the time that God wants me to pour into the relationships that I have. But also top priority, and you got to look at your schedule and go, okay, where am I giving God that time?
Yeah.
Because I could say, I want God to lead my work, and I want God to lead my family, and me giving that time. But if you don't give him time to tell you how to do that, you're setting that up backwards.
I would agree.
And so I would say one of the main things, and this has been something God's been working on me, is like learning how to take that Sabbath well. So on a weekly basis, going like, hey, you need to take that break. And it's a spiritual discipline that is so vital to our rhythms. Because if we don't, we can run into, I would call it the rat race of life. Like we're constantly trying to get the next thing done. And so it becomes this heavy frustrating moment, and especially even now in our culture. You said better, like those better options. You said fear, like the FOMO, like fear of missing out. Now it's the fear of better options.
Well, that's true. And
like we sit here and go, what if I could be doing this? What if I could be doing
that? I could have been half the way to Bozeman right now. Yes. Right. Anyway, but I think about those rhythms, and for me, getting out of some rhythms was really difficult, like the rhythm of always having to go. And I remember even talking maybe with you or even David one time, like I just sat and watched a TV show, and in that season, I couldn't remember it. And I felt really guilty. I'm like, I wasn't with somebody, or I wasn't going somewhere, and it felt weird. Or dividing, like there's opportunities to hang out with people that feel like hanging out with a friend, and hanging out with people that sometimes feels like work. And for you and I that are with people all the time, that's a weird balance, right? But also, I think sometimes guilt can get in there, because I even think about, I've been trying to continually over the years add more reading to the time that I spend, and I don't want to feel guilty about not reading. And sometimes it comes in clusters and waves. Like I took a road trip a couple weeks ago. I listened to 2 books, which was awesome, and they were great books. But I don't want to feel guilty about not reading. But I know it's something that has to be in that rhythm. So I'm learning or being. There's a catalyst there that's prodding me to say, have you thought about this? Are you thinking about this?
I think when it comes to rhythms, what you've got to answer and look at a little bit is going, what are those things that I need to do, but also what are those things that fill me up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because every week you're going to have things that, whether it's your job, kids, spouse, or just life, whatever it may be, you go, I need to get these things done.
Yep, I would agree.
But then you also got to have time to where it's like, I need these other things to fill me.
Yep.
So
not just donuts. Yeah. Not just because I love those.
So that's where I'd go, like the need part of it is looking at, okay, what are the things I need to get done? What's the work that God has me to do? And kind of going, all right. And recognizing there will come a time where you may not get it all done this week.
Yeah, absolutely.
And because work can always, people can always put to the next
always be
demands.
there. Yep.
And so we both experience that in ministry, but all jobs have that on some levels. But then it's learning how to stop and be able to go, okay, now we've got to focus on, this is the stuff that's going to fill me.
Yeah, I love it.
Because if you, and I don't know, tell me this, like percentage wise, because I do think, like you look at God's rhythm.
Did you see my brain was like, you said percentage wise, and I was like, oh crap, a math question. Oh shoot, this is going down.
But this is where I think of it is like, so there's 6 days to kind of get that work done, and then 1 day to
absolutely.
So I would say percentage wise, the things that we try to accomplish is going to be a higher percentage versus, and I would say maybe even accomplishes, but what God wants you to do in that week, whether it's, hey, helping your kids do homework, whether it's, I got to get this done at work, I've got to go get all these things accomplished. That's going to play a good portion of your week. And then you times that over a month, that kind of stuff. But then it's also going, but does your week have this 10, maybe 20% that goes, you need to be filled up?
Yep.
Because if you don't have that, then eventually what's going to happen is that accomplishment stuff, the stuff you need to get done, starts to fall off too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or you're running at a pace that you're just going to go, you're eventually going to break down.
And it's unsustainable, really, I think the reality of developing those rhythms is so important. And one of the things that I think we think that, hey, if I give myself to this, I'm going to lack here. But I'll use the example of when Rachel and I really began steady date nights, back in the day, we thought she had the feeling like, oh, we're depriving the girls. We're not here. We're not hanging out with them and stuff like that. But we soon found out the girls were like, hey, when you guys going on date night and who's coming over to watch us? You know what I mean? Yeah. Because those other people can be a part of your rhythm that really invest in your kids. I think of, Katrina's and Kinsey's that babysat our girls and invested in them and really made an impact. And they looked forward to us leaving. And then it became easy to be like, heck yeah, let's have another date night. Come on, But I agree, finding those things that fill you and it doesn't always have to be money stuff, because I like to play golf, and golf's expensive, so you can't just continually golf your ease away. But man, finding that good balance, and I don't enjoy the word balance, but finding those things that really give just a pep and a kick to get you ready for that next week and get you ready to do the things that you need to do and you have to do.
Now, I'll switch it here a little bit just because we get to do a lot of counseling with people. So have you seen, just in talking with people, connecting with people, do you think this is a pretty big struggle or a tough area for people to navigate?
Absolutely.
And
it is.
Why?
I think here's the hard part. When things are bad with a couple, I mean, everything just goes laser focused to the issue, right? And it's hard because everything wants to be fixed with that issue. Well, some things can't get fixed with that issue unless you take a step back and say, okay, are you dating? Are you spending time with the Lord? Are you spending time with friends? Because when things get bad, we just kind of go into this self-preservation mode. Well, I better fix this. This better be good. And I think people are unwilling to maintain the things that they need to do, you know, and there's so many other conversations that could go along with that. They spend too much time. You have to consistently watch your influence. You have to consistently watch and guarding what you're doing. And that's tough. You know, I get it. You know, like we talked about options, there are options and there are seasons. And I think we can get distracted by seasons, and people get distracted. And that is one of the big things, right? You get distracted and you find yourself, I never thought I'd be here. I never thought, you know, I never thought this would be an issue, and you get complacent and you don't continue to pursue those things. And I think that's a big word. Pursue those things that are vital for you to maintain and to walk through those seasons and to walk through those rhythms.
Yep.
You got to pursue your wife, pursue relationship with kids, pursue friendships, and then setting those, again, it sounds like a marriage conversation, right?
Yeah.
Setting those boundaries and priorities that are so key for you to guard those things that you want to see happen. Will they change? Yes. We grow up, we grow out of things, right? But boundaries and priorities are so key to guard against that, like learning to say no, learning to say yes, and really establishing like, this is our family. We're in a really healthy rhythm. Okay, then what do we have to do to guard against this? And, you know, you and Tina have those, and those, it's vital.
I found in the conversation, usually people who are struggling with rhythm, usually have two things. One, they're usually lacking purpose.
Yeah.
So they just don't, when you lack purpose, you don't know why I'm doing what you're doing.
Sure.
So then it becomes, I just feel like I'm at a dead end job. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And it's just that constant question. I don't know what to do with my life. So then it's really hard to figure out what rhythms I should have.
Mm-hmm.
So I think some of that is a starting point of like, no, God's given you purpose. Even recently in some of our sermon series, we've been talking like some of our just simple purpose conversation is, hey, we're here to worship. So then you've got to, okay, how do I create a rhythm of doing that? And so finding that purpose and finding those things. But then on the other side, so this would be like the opposite side of this, is someone who's got too much control.
Yeah.
They are controlling their rhythms. They're so rigid. They're so this, and they don't give any room for anything else.
Sure.
And so sometimes it could be, so you got one person who's like, doesn't have any rhythms because they just can't find a good purpose. And you got someone who's way too on that side.
Yeah.
And the rhythms are actually not helping them because they're trying to control the outcomes they want.
Yeah.
And God's going, that's not going to work.
Yeah. And you and I have couples that come in the purpose that one can sit and read, my wife.
Right.
And the other one wants to go, me.
Right.
And neither of them are willing to bend.
Yes.
And you're like, somewhere in the middle
they
is
want to control what this looks like.
I want you to quit doing that. I want you to quit going. Okay, hold on.
Right.
How do you give grace? How do you offer an invitation to be open to something that might be beneficial? And I'm not saying like just dump this to go here or dump this to go here, but man, is there a willingness? And I think you talked about that rigidity.
Yeah.
You know, is there a willingness to open yourself up to something that could be really, really beneficial, not only to you, but to your relationship?
And I would think of it as a pendulum.
Yep.
Sometimes you can go too strong on the control part of it, and you got to bring it a little bit back. And then sometimes you can just go, man, I'm going through just a rough season. I feel maybe I've lost it. I'm just not, almost that kind of depressive season, whatever. Yeah. And you can just go, I'm not working out anymore. I'm not doing anything. And so you got to wait, have I lost my purpose a little bit? I know for me, one of the areas, if I was going to be where I'm at on that pendulum, is sometimes I can get too stuck on the rigid side of things. So take, for instance, like I get going through the school year and I actually like this change. Like, okay, school, kids are going to school, work is happening, and everybody's back from work, not from back from vacation.
What they're going to eat or in my fridge.
And so, and we go, and like there's like sports and all those kind of things, all those activities start to pick up, and it just feels like, okay, now we're in a good rhythm. And then when you do that for 9 months and you're like, man, It was great. And so you get excited about the summer because summer's going to change that. But what's funny to me, and I'm learning this about myself and I don't love it, 2 weeks into summer, I'm like, okay, I'm done with summer rhythm.
Yep, I know.
We had this change and this is great. Well, I'm done. Like I want to get back to, and so then becomes, and it's funny to watch. So I can catch myself, okay, you're a little too controlled here. But then I catch myself in August and I'm just like, are we ever going to get back?
The never ending summer.
Is this what I'm doing for the rest of my life? Like I get into this, I've lost purpose. I'm just like, I'm like, and God's like, hey, all right. And I think you will have ebbs and flows to
absolutely.
this. But it's going, okay, recognizing those and then getting back to a rhythm that you're like, no, this is, and you got to fight for it.
Yeah.
You got to, and so sometimes when you've lost that purpose, it's going, okay, I may need to lean into, hey, back into like, hey, I need to, and for me, I'm learning somewhere is like, I may need to have some more projects or just something that I'm doing with my hands just because that rhythm for everybody else is good. It's needed. My family needs this, but Todd's struggling here. And so I've got to work on that.
And I love that. I didn't even realize that this year. And Rachel started saying something that I didn't pick up on right away. She's like, that sounds good. You should go do that. And it wasn't like, hey, get out of my hair so I can read. Hey, you're driving us nuts, which has been the case at times. Like Rachel said, you're driving us nuts. You should go do something. But it really is like, hey, I see that you need to do this. So go do that. And I appreciate that.
You're different.
Yes.
Like you've got to like, hey, let's go travel somewhere. Let's go do something different. Let's go. So you love breaking that.
I do.
Rhythm on some levels.
Man, just
and
get me on a jet plane.
Get
me on a jet plane. Let's go.
And I'm like, that would break what I have going on. This like I just start. And I need that in my life, but I'm just like, I can't, don't break. I have my week all planned out. Please don't mess with it. And so those are just different personalities. And so I know I fall sometimes on that control part. And when that sees like summer, it feels so like we don't have the rhythm.
Oh, I know.
Let's go. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. And I know that's coming in. And wherever you're at, whatever's going on, man, stop and have that conversation. Stop and have a moment. Sit down. Take some extended time. Like I had to sit down the other day and go, Morgan's graduating in 2 years and effectively will be on her own.
Yeah.
Taylor's graduating in 2 years and will effectively go to college. And so this rhythm is, I found myself looking ahead to different rhythms and a little bit freaking me out, a little bit planning mode, which I have never been, but this last few years with the urgency that's come, I've really wanted to be more intentional. And so that pendulum, as you've talked, has swung to, man, Chris, what does Chris want to see? Not out of regret, but out of looking forward, and I think that to me, that's a beautiful thing about rhythm. What are you looking forward to?
Yeah.
And can that be a part of something that you do that really you can embrace and see benefiting your life?
Yeah. I would say another analogy, if you want to play this out, is like we talk about, especially in church, being irrationally generous with your time, talent, and treasure. So time, I think, is sometimes that tough one where it's like, yeah, you need to serve, you need to do those things. But I think multiply, just like we would say in finances, hey, budget your treasure and make sure that you are doing with it. I think rhythms is kind of that way of budgeting your time. I know that sounds, yes, everybody knows that kind of thing. But are you sitting down and going, all right, is the time that God's given me, am I accomplishing these things that God, I believe, has put on my plate? Like, hey, you look at this like, my family dynamics are about ready to change here. Am I created a rhythm to where at the end of this, I will be like, man, I'm sending them off well.
Man, I'm stoked. I really do.
And that's where you want.
Yeah.
I think a lot of parents want to be, but it's sometimes hard. Sometimes you can look and be like, oh man, I haven't done enough. I'm missing this. And it's like, okay, we'll start now and start being like, hey, what's that rhythm I want to create for that? But then I think the first area starts going, okay, what's your rhythm with God? What's your rhythm with your family? What's your rhythm within your work? And that should be the priority.
Yep. You know, and it's okay to hear me when we say this. It's okay to take a step back so that you can move forward.
Yes.
And I think it's essential for you just don't quit letting the pendulum take you where you don't want to go. Stop it and be like, okay, if we want to see these things, if I want to see my worship with God to be more intentional, then I've got to develop a rhythm that says this is important to me. And man, it'll be worth it. On the other side of hard, it will be worth it.
Yep. And I think that rhythm part of it will teach you. It's like either just like with money, you have too much control and you're not letting God in, or you are not intentional enough, and God's going, hey, you can be more intentional with this. And so it gives it more purpose, or he'll say, hey, give it a little bit more room.
Yep.
And I guarantee you in a time conversation, God's going to lead you in one of those so that you can find those healthy rhythms to where ultimately, here's the next step for you. You start to find, man, I love how I'm getting filled up throughout the week. And I also feel like I'm being very purposeful with my relationships and with God. That is the ultimate purpose of rhythm. God's given you that time to give you the opportunity to live that life to the full and invest in the people around you, invest in your relationship with the Lord, but also to do the things, the purpose that he has for you, and do it in the way that you go, man, I love, and you don't run out. You feel, I can keep going. I can keep having that sustainability.
That's so good. I love it. Well, cool. Well, as with anything, man, if there are other times you want to have a conversation, follow up on this. Don't hesitate.
Can't solve all this in 30 minutes.
No, I mean, it's not, I mean, man, you are not Bob Saget and I am not John Stamos. So we did not solve that in 30 minutes, right? Like, but it is good. And there's time for coffee and there's time for conversation. And we hope that you know that we're here to help you take that next step. So
Thanks for joining us. Season 3. Here we go.
It's going down. All right.
Going down for real.
See you next time.